Hey guys, um, I started writing this email newsletter, just sharing things that I'm learning, thoughts, not specifically with mentors all the time, but really the deeper concept and ideas I'm learning through the vehicle of running my business, right? I also want to do a video version of these, just because I'm only sharing these because I think these concepts and the lessons I'm learning are uh, I believe will be helpful for you. Um, and they are broad enough. I love thinking of high level concepts that apply across industries, across areas of life. Um, yeah, so my hope is that it's valuable for you. But so jumping right into it, and this is, it doesn't be me talking. Really, as I process these thoughts, this is almost my you call it journal, for my own learning and organizing my thoughts. But I want to share with you guys in case it could also help you. So today, I want to talk about the idea of trade-offs, and this is something I've been thinking a lot about lately. I believe this is a very important topic for every area of life. So business, obviously, which is really where these ideas kind of start from for me. But I'll share kind of some example for myself, very relevant in personal life, really everywhere. That's why I think this is such an important topic. And I do find, as I talk to my friends or observe people, or just different, decisions people make, I think a misunderstanding of trade-offs I see so often it leads to bad decision making and even more important that people's unhappiness, maybe with their life circumstances or the choices they made. So every decision has a trade-off, right? That's not a new idea, right? Everyone understands there's pros and cons to the choices we make. I think what often happens though is we misunderstand what those pros and cons are. Maybe we over or underemphasize different pros and cons, or sometimes we're completely just unaware of the pros and cons of the choices we're making. So I'll use an example from my personal life that's very relevant and real and recent. Oh, those are two R's. That wasn't intentional. Um, so I've had this thought, this self-talk that's found my way into my head the past few weeks, and it goes something like this. I'm failing as a father because I have not provided a larger home for my family yet. So context, I have three kids. We live in a two-bedroom apartment, not the most space, but we are very blessed, when I really think about it. But it is a goal of mine, and has been a goal of mine to provide a larger home for my girls as they're getting older and they need more space. Um, my oldest daughter is almost 9, and recently she's been talking about like she's not complaining, but she's just talking about like, oh, when I have my own bedroom, I could do this and this. This is what I want in it. And that's really what kind of triggered this thought. Um, that if kind of go back in time, I would say I wanted to provide this larger home for my family sooner than it's been. So essentially it's taking longer than I wanted. Yeah, so there's this thought in my head. But as I think about, my what I've learned about trade-offs, and as I've worked on my mindset and my thinking, which is really has been a focus the past 2 years, I have this other more intentional self-talk, kind of like if I have two people in my head talking, that says something like this. I haven't been able to provide a larger home for my family because I have chosen to provide more of myself. Right? So this is intentional. It's intentional self-talk, but it's intentional choice. It wasn't something that happened to me. It's a choice I've made. Right? This was part of the plan when I made the choice to go down this path, almost 6 years ago now, when I quit my corporate job. It was intentional, and it's actually the choice that I wanted then. And when I remember that, am reminded that this is the choice that I want, right? If I stayed in my corporate career 6 years ago, I could have gone down, the typical, getting pay raises, getting promotions, and having my pay go up at a certain rate. And I believe by now I would have been able to afford a larger home for my family. But there's a trade-off, right? The trade-off would have been I probably would be gone 10 to 12 hours a day, Monday to Friday. I wouldn't have the freedom to control my time and the flexibility in my time to spend the countless hours I've been able to spend with my girls the past 6 years, to be able to go on vacations and travel when we want to, in the middle of the week, avoid crowds, um, and to have uh, potentially 3 meals a day with them, right? If I wanted to, I have that choice. Uh, if I see that full picture of the trade-offs here, the pros and cons, oh man, easily I would choose this path again. I would not change that, right? So, we often there's two sayings that I think of when we I guess they're kind of fallacies when we think about trade-offs. The grass is greener on the other side, and when someone says, they want to have their cake and eat it too. So I'll kind of talk about those two. I think they're great ways to illustrate this. But there's this mistake, right? Of so the grass is greener on the other side. I'll kind of use my example here. I think what's happening when we have this mindset is that we overemphasize the positive of the choice we did not make, while we overemphasize the costs of the choice we did make, right? The path we're on. And on the flip side, we underemphasize the cost of the choice we didn't make, and we underemphasize the pros, the positives of the path we did take. All right. So let me give you an example there. I know that might be kind of hard to follow. So I might, be tempted. And this is, I think, part of this is just a human condition that we take things for granted, right? I think that's also a piece of this here. So with my example, I might be tempted to think in my thinking to underemphasize and forget how amazing it is that I could wake up in the morning, kind of have my own morning routine, see my girls, start the day with them, right? We have family time together and then we go off and do our separate things. I could take that for granted and underemphasize that, right? At the same time, I may make the mistake of uh, overemphasizing the cost. Let's say the cost, there's many costs. Let's say one of the costs of this choice is that we don't have a larger home yet. I might overemphasize that and think about that. Like, oh man, I wish, I feel bad I don't have this, I haven't provided this for my kids. Um, but again, on the flip side, using my example again, I won't belabor the point too much, is it's easy to fall into this trap and underemphasize all the costs it would take if I stayed in that corporate path, right? And when I remind myself of all the cost and sacrifice if I stayed on that path, it's very clear to me that that's not the right choice. That's the grass is greener on the other side. It's the mistake of putting the wrong weight on the pros and cons, and really, again, taking things for granted, that the positives that we already have. The other kind of saying here that I think of often, it's a funny one. I actually didn't understand the saying until maybe like a couple years ago, which is kind of maybe kind of sad. But when people say they want to have their cake and eat it too, I understood the concept it was explaining before I understood what the phrase actually was saying, right? So here's my understanding. Maybe I'm still wrong, but you could tell me if you have a different understanding. Uh, Having your cake and eating it too is like wanting to, you have a beautiful cake and you're like, oh, so beautiful, I want to keep it. Maybe I want to save it for later, but I also want to eat it now, right? I can't have it and keep the cake and have it also eaten into my stomach at the same time, right? If I eat it, then the cake's gone, right? So I think that's what I came to understand. Like that's what the saying means. It makes sense now. Um, so I think the fallacy here is basically you have two choices. They're kind of like mutually exclusive, um, and you want the positive from both options, right? I want to have a stable income that's growing, and I want to have the freedom and flexibility to do what I want with my time, right? You can get there. So I'm not saying that's not possible, right? At least in that immediate fork in the road where you choose to kind of go, quit your job and start your own business or grow your own business. Usually in the immediate right away, that's not you can't have both of those, right? Or I could say something like, you know, I want uh the freedom and flexibility. Well, let me take a step back. I want a stable, reliable income that will always be there, but I also want the upside of making a lot of money some months, right? That also is not there, right? When you have your own business, what's great is you have so much control and so many leverage you control for your income, how much money you make. But you're not going to have a fixed stable income that you're going to experience the upside as well as the downside. You can make $0, right? So that's you can't have both of those. So yeah, I find this is also a fallacy that I find myself in and I see others find themselves in. And oftentimes what it leads to is actually indecision, right? Because you have two choices, you're like, oh man, I want both. But and then maybe on the flip side, it's like if I choose this one, oh no, but I'm missing out on this one. Um, but if I choose this one, then I'm missing out on that one. And there's this concept of loss aversion, which means that we often are more we often care more about not losing something than gaining something, right? So if you have two choices and you're just focused on, you know, this choice doesn't allow me to have this choice. This choice doesn't allow me to have this choice, which is kind of like obvious. The danger, I think, often is that we don't make a choice. And what happens when you don't make a choice, kind of funny when you think about it, is you don't get either positive outcome, right? If you chose one of them, at least you get the upside of this one or this one. If you make no choice, you get neither, which is even worse, right? So there's this concept of oftentimes, if you have a decision to make, oftentimes what's important is that you make a decision rather than not making any decision, right? Of course, the high level, like approach is make the right decision, learning to make good decisions, all that stuff. But it's even worse making a decision is better than making no decision, even if it's not technically the best decision, right? So that's something I've learned just to make imperfect decisions that are the best with my current, information. Yeah, so that's kind of, what I wanted to share my thinking. And again, I've applied what I've learned to this self-talk. And really, I would say this lie in my head, right? I'm not a good father. I'm failing because I haven't provided a good home, a big enough home for my family. It's not true. But I've had to work through this in my own head. And really, it only comes as a kind of reflexive response, right? Because I've learned what I've learned. So if I kind of sum it up here, there are, some final points that are you can take home with you. We have to recognize every choice has a trade-off and actually recognize what those trades are, right? To be aware of what we're getting and what we're paying, what we're sacrificing for it. And then that will help us know if that's the choice we actually want to make, right? Don't let things happen to you. Make those choices. We want to avoid the grass is greener on the other side trap, which usually means taking time to be thankful and appreciating what you do have now, because it's easy for us to take those things for granted. But also remembering that the other side has all this downside and costs, right, to get that upside. It's not just free green grass. Maybe it took, I don't know, stinky fertilizer to grow or something like that. And then, of course, avoiding the indecision that comes from thinking about the have when we want to have our cake and eat it too. Indecision oftentimes is worse than making a subpar decision. Yeah, I mean that's what I have. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Um, whether you enjoy these type of videos. Because if you guys do, I'll make a lot more. But again, if no one enjoys it, it was very beneficial for myself to organize my thoughts and share it in this format.